right, well, hello, and welcome everyone to our BG5 Live. Today is April 14th, 2020. This is episode number 48. Know what's happening with my voice here. And today we're going to take a look at trait 42 in quality 5. And what we're going to be taking a look at is growth. So really what we're in the process of doing right now is completing a cycle. So before we jump in and get started, let's say hello to our panel. So hello, and welcome, Chris.
Hey, everybody, welcome. Super glad you're here. This is a fun one. Oh, I'm so excited.
And you have this in your design, right, Chris?
I do several times, my friend, several times.
And you just did your own rant about it recently. Earlier today.
I just did a podcast about it this morning, so I'm really excited about it. This is
excellent.
Powerful.
Yeah, definitely. Well, welcome, Chris and Natalie.
Yes, hello, welcome, and glad to be here, and welcome everybody. And I'm just going to sit back and enjoy the ride and listen to you. Now, I know Chris has beautiful, Chris was assisting me in the foundation course, and I remember talking about this strength and this trait and how you explained it. So I'm just looking forward to the discussion today.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I have heard from Lavina. She's getting better. So I think she's on the other side of things. So she's still recovering. So look forward to hopefully having her back soon. All right, let's jump in. So what we have been taking a look at is really taking a look at sort of the story that's been happening, the story that's unfolding, especially with the whole coronavirus and what we've been going through. So again, we took a look at in the beginning of March, we entered into the 36 where there was the crisis. That's when a national emergency was declared on Friday afternoon on March 13th over the coronavirus outbreak. We had innocence, right? It's the spiritual warrior. This is where we had the stay-at-home order. At least we had it here. I think in many states here, and depending on where you are in the world, it may have been a different time, but right around that time. Then we had all these opinions come out, right? Thinking logically, teaching all these opinions on what we should do, how we can take care of ourselves, how we can avoid catching the virus. And then we went into control, again, more of a lockdown. And then last week, what we took a look at was initiation shock, an awakening. And, it was said the next 2 weeks will be very hard and very painful. So I just wanted to pause here for a moment because I just think it's kind of an interesting thing. And we may not have seen anything outwardly shocking, but we may have experienced some kind of shock in our personal lives, professional lives, whatever. It's still kind of shocking that we're still, in lockdown, that we're still have a stay-at-home order, that we're not back to work yet. So I just wanted to pause here for a moment, and I just wanted to see, just in the last week, if anyone had any shocks. So for those of you in Facebook, or for those of you who are here at our BG5 Live, if you want to type into the chat area, I would just love to hear, just a recognition, were there any shocks for you in the last week? So Chris, any shocks for you?
Like cracking up over here. Yeah, I would say I definitely have come across some information on the internet that is just a radical shock of what I thought was reality and truth, and waking up to it. And it's very deeply shocking to the system, my own system internally, and just going, whoa, hold on a second. What we think is going on is not really going on. There's something else going on. And so that for me was the most shocking thing. There's some other things just, in different ways throughout, personally and professionally, different small shocks, but that one was probably the biggest one. So yeah.
And myself as well. Just I've been watching some documentaries and some some material that has been quite shocking.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm.
How about for anyone in our Zoom room, or Natalie, anything that that you would like to share?
Yeah, well, I've been also on the internet, is sometimes deep at night. I'm like, no, leave it, and go to sleep. But yeah, it's shocking, and one of the things. So in the last weeks, I believe 2 weeks, I know that some of the censors what Google and YouTube had are taken off. So whatever you Google now or look up on YouTube, you find information which previously was kind of under the radar, and yeah, that's indeed shocking. And it's right around this time of the 51 initiation and shock that all of this is now just easily findable. So it was there, but it's coming up for everybody to become aware of and see, and yeah, that's it's interesting what's happening in the world. And as you previously said, I think there's, and you previously said, I think there's more going on behind the scenes, and we are going to to a trend. We are in a transitioning time, and I always thought when you said that, so so where do I look? But yeah, and just looking, you are in the United States, but I'm kind of following now the presses that President Trump does daily, actually, and then all of the news and the news people that are sitting there. It's like literally shocking each day. I never was so aware of how is viciously, or what's the word, that they attack a president, right? That's not what we do here as news. Like, we have polite questions to the president and to our king or royalty or whatever. There's even a protocol how to ask questions, etc. If it is royalty. So for me, it's shocking how they just go. They take their guns, go like, they're sitting there in the presser. I'm like, So that has been fascinating for me personally, to just see these developments, and I never have taken a look at politics in the States, but all the things that are now issued and declared, and it's that's fascinating. What there is a lot of movement, right? There's a lot of movement, and why I started looking at it, because the States is very, it's kind of, if something changes there, we will follow, right? So that's we are quite connected, especially as the Netherlands, but also as Europe, with in the global system. So that's why I am paying more attention to what is transitioning over there, and how it may affect us eventually.
Right.
So it's yeah, it's a bit bizarre times.
It is bizarre times, and we have a couple comments that are in the chat room. Lisa says that she had a gallbladder attack when she heard of a bus driver being coughed on, and then who, I assume the bus driver died a week later. She had never had gallbladder problems before, and the reason I think this is significant is that trait 51 is related to the gall and the gallbladder. I think that's interesting. And then Connor, who is an evaluator, a reflector in human design terms, is she says it's not shocking. It's been coming a long time. There's trackable patterns that started in the late 1800s. Having the veils parted is the shock. So the Maya people, or people who have the cross of Maya, who can see this, have been seeing it for a long time. And there are people who have been seeing it and seeing the patterns for a long time. But what is shocking is that we're now seeing what we haven't seen. It's sort of like, those posters that were really popular in the 90s that you have to, you look at it, it looks like all these fractals, like it's just this pattern, and you're like, there's nothing there. And then you look at it just the right way, and you kind of cross your eyes and you stick your tongue out and you're like, oh, and then suddenly it like pops out, and it's like this 3D image that pops out. And once you see it, you can never not see it again. But you can't tell someone how to see it. They can only soften the gaze, soften. You can't see it by trying. You have to not try to see it. And then suddenly you see it. And that's what shock is like. That's what I think is happening for a lot of people right now.
Yep. Yep. I agree. You know, so it is part of this sort of awakening. I think I said this several sessions ago, but just to consider this: what if everything we have been taught, everything that we have learned, everything that we have grown up with, what if everything is a lie? And just consider that, you know, and what is the impact of that? And what is, just like Connor was saying, you know, what are the veils that are being parted that are allowing us to see things that maybe we didn't see before, you know? And again, sometimes when those things that have been hidden are now seen, it can also be very shocking as well. Right, so that's where we have been. Today, we're taking a look at trait 42. I think I was jumping ahead. I think last week I said we were going to go to trouble at the beginning. That's where we're going to go next week. But right now, it's really about growth, and it's actually about completing a cycle. So we're in the middle of completing a cycle. So cycles have beginnings, middles, and ends. We're going to be talking much more about this, of course, today. So it's just interesting that we're in this period of growth, and we're in this period of completing a cycle. Then we move to ordering, which is trouble at the beginning. That's in trait number 3. We move to nourishment in trait number 27. And then we move to 24, which is rationalization. So, you know, again, I think a lot of the shock, the parting of the veils is going to continue. We'll also need some time to kind of nourish, to rationalize what's happening. And we can see that when we move to the 2, and again, you can see this line right here, we move away from purpose fulfilled through the mind, and we move into purpose fulfilled through form. And 2 is about the driver. So in a sense, it's about changing direction. It is, you know, something, you know, there's something new. We're changing direction, where we can then assimilate everything that we have learned, and we can go back to making a contribution. So again, just interesting as we're following along, you know, with all of these steps. All right, so let's focus in and zoom in on this trait 42. So trait 42 is about growth, and it's part of cycles. It's increase. It's the Grail, and it's the Grail. The Grail is the experience. So this is one of the format strengths. It's one of the format traits. It's part of one of the format strengths, which is connected to our experiential way, our human experiential way, which is about beginnings, middles, ends, beginnings, middles, ends, beginnings, middles, ends. So we have the 53, which starts things, which starts a cycle, and we have the 42 that ends a cycle. So when we take a look at trait 42, this is about completing a cycle. And when we take a look at completing a cycle is the heart of growth, because that's where we really, at the end of the cycle, is where we can look back and we can say, oh, we can start to put all the pieces together. We can start to take a look at what are the lessons that we've learned. So it really is the tenacity to stay with a cycle in order to maximize its inherent potential. So if we, you know, try to get out of a cycle before the cycle has come to an end, it can be quite difficult. And Chris knows this very well. She has actually this entire strength. So I look forward to hearing more from Chris and her experience of actually having, both the 53 and the 42 and having this strength. So again, you have to stay through to the end. So in a sense, you get the reward of growth. And each cycle builds on the lessons learned from the prior cycle. So we often think about a cycle as just a circle, but a cycle is really a spiral. And it becomes a spiral when it's built on the lessons learned from the prior or previous cycle. And again, this is the format of our collective experience, right? So this experience is to be shared. And there's a balanced development by using humanity's collective experience to create a foundation for future progress, right? So it's not only about, us as individuals going through our cycles, but it is humanity itself, going through particular cycles as well. One of the classes, I'm going to self-promote here for a moment, but we're doing a cycles class coming up in May, and we're going to take a look at all the different cycles, from the big global cycles, right, to the individual lifetime cycles, to daily cycles, or what we're taking a look at here is sort of the yearly cycles. So again, the cycles is humanity's collective experience to create the foundation for future progress. And before we can begin a new cycle, the former cycle must be brought to its natural end. This is really key. Again, before we can begin a new cycle, the former cycle must be brought to its natural end. So I also believe that at this point in time, things are sort of coming to a natural end. Even if we take a look at the whole outbreak and what's happening, I think the cycle of the coronavirus itself as well is starting to wrap up and come to an end. And if you don't bring it to its natural end, or what was left unfinished or incomplete will have to be revisited in the new one. Right? So you want to complete a cycle fully so you're not carrying it forward into the future, so that you can learn and you can grow from that experience, from that cycle, so that you can then progress again in a spiral, as opposed to getting caught in a repetitive loop. So Chris, I would love to hear sort of your feedback and your perspective, especially not only having trait 42, but also having the entire strength.
Yeah. And thanks, Karen. And so one of the things that I have a lot to say about trait 42, in my sacral mastermind, we're actually working through trait 42 right now. It just happened to fall at the same time that that it's happening in the transit. So one of the things about cycles is, and it's so important for all of us really, is to enter into cycles correctly. And that's what this is really talking about, because when we don't, regardless of what your design is, when we don't enter into them, and if you have this format channel, you are by definition a builder or express builder. So if you have this format strength, you have to be a builder because of that, because the energy resource is activated. But those of us may have a 42 or the 53 or something like that and be a different career type. So it's really important that we enter into the cycles correctly. Otherwise, as this shows, is we're not going to get the lesson. And a lot of people enter into cycles and they just can't finish that. So they have the energy to start something, but they don't have the energy to complete it. And I will often help people complete things because of having this strength. But one of the things that I've noticed myself is that if I try to force an ending to a cycle, bad news. Like it's really, it doesn't work. It's like, I just want this to be done. It's causing too much anxiety. I just want it to be done, or I'm afraid of the ending of it. so I won't let it end. So there's all these different ways that we can manipulate this energy in this cycle. And I have more to say about trait 42, but I think that's what I really want to get across with cycles, is that, you know, when we don't complete something all the way, we don't get the growth or the lesson, and we have to go back and do it. And those of us who have this format strength know this all too painfully well, I'm sure. So,
Yeah. Thank you, Chris.
yeah.
Is there anything, Natalie, that you would like to add?
Well, what has stayed with me about what Chris explained in when we went through this in the foundation course, it is so hard to go back once you didn't end a cycle correctly. And I'm sorry if I missed what you said, because I was watching also the Facebook of you. But did you share about that? I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Yeah. So what I really found fascinating is, so we all have these kind of things that show up in our life, you know, over and over again, kind of you bump into it again, right? And then for you having the full strength and having the 42, you really need to end the cycle correctly to be able to grow and go to the next phase. So it's roundish, but it's actually kind of, you know, you grow to the next cycle and you grow to the next cycle, right? So I was wondering if you wanted to share about that, how if you come across something that you didn't end well, you can get to a completion, but it is really tough. So
yeah.
yeah. I don't know if I'm putting
You know, it's a good question, and I think that this is one of those ones where it's a deep, like, I don't like to redo things that I've done before. I really hate it. I really, really hate it. Like, when I'm done, I'm done. But there's a difference between being like, I'm done, I don't want to do this anymore, from the mind and the anxiety that, and the like the willpower, like all this stuff, the ego gets in there. It's like, I don't want to look bad, I don't want to have to go back and do that, I don't want to have to redo that thing, I don't want to have to go back and say, God, you know, I effed up, I really, you know, I could have dealt with that differently. And so that's part of it. And I think, but when I'm really complete, like if I am complete with something, I'm so complete that it'll be gone. Like, it's gone. I take the lesson and then I move on. And somebody will go, oh, remember that time that you did all this stuff? And I'm like, I did? Huh, that's interesting. Like, I don't remember it. It's so funny to have people, even what you just said, Natalie, like when I'm channeling, which is what I often do, like I'm so complete with the transmission that I'm done and I really don't remember. And that can be really frustrating for other people around me. You're like, remember when you did that thing? And I'm like, no, I'm so complete. I'm complete. So it's really interesting.
That reminds me of another thing that Tuck once shared, that once you complete a cycle, you take the lesson, and that's what you take on. But the experience itself,
gone.
Gone.
It's gone. It's literally gone. It's so fascinating. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, exactly. And Julie was asking, so if we have the 53, is it turned on by the neutrinos? So for example, I have the 53 as well. So I'm really good at beginning things. I'm not so good at completing things.
Right.
That's where working with Chris, working with Lavina is very handy, because they help me complete things.
Yeah.
And so yes, so if you do have the 53, there's going to be, in a sense, more of a pressure, if you will, to complete things that are currently not completed. Which I was just giggling to myself, because I'm currently working on something that I've been working on for a long time, and I finally have the energy to really start to get it complete. So yeah, so it is completing those things that, again, you may not have had complete.
Yeah, I want to share in the Facebook group. Sarah says, it's funny, I started painting a few years ago and I can't finish a painting until I'm ready. Sometimes it's in one sitting, and there's others I started 2 years ago. My defined heart says, I want to finish. And my sacral center is like, no, not today. Oh my gosh, I cannot tell you how much I absolutely get that. Like, I have paintings hung up all over the place. In fact, my family, like half done, and I hang them on the wall because I watch them and I'm like, are you ready for some? No, no, no. And my family has this idea that once it hangs on the wall, it's complete. So then I'll take it down and repaint over it. And they're like, what are you doing? And they get really mad at me. And I'm just like, this is my way that I create. I'm in dialogue with it, and it will complete when it's ready to complete. So I totally get that, Sarah. It's really
I love that. And yeah, and that's the thing is, you know, and Chris, you mentioned this, allowing it to come to its natural completion, not trying to force it, not thinking, you know, not letting the mind take control, thinking, oh, it has to be complete now, or it has to be complete in this way. It's allowing it to complete and, in a sense, naturally fulfill its course. And that's when, you know, in a sense, it's complete and you can move on, take the lessons forward, but, you know, leave the experience behind.
exactly. And because this is abstract experiential, there's a lot of expectations that get attached to the outcome of something. So it's really about entering into the cycle just for the sheer experience of it, with, you know, recognizing that we're going to have you know, expectations. We can no more get rid of our expectations than to change our eye color. However, it's about how attached are we to those expectations and the outcomes. And so it's really finding that balance in when you're creating, to go, oh, I have all these expectations. Am I willing to throw myself into the cycle no matter what the outcome is going to be? And that is really a big surrender that a lot of people grapple with. And I know I have myself as well, but.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. And Belinda was saying, I was living with a friend who had a lot of big personal challenges, chaos in his life. And this experience made me extremely uncomfortable. And I kept trying to leave, but for some reason I couldn't leave, which felt out of character for me. This ended up being a 3-year cycle experience where I received profound guidance and learning. It wasn't fun, but I understand now that it was a cycle and the timing was out of my control. And so I think that's a really important thing to remember, is that the timing, you can't control the timing. It is out of your control. So it's just trusting and feeling. And that's why your decision-making strategy is so important, right? Because the decision-making strategy, not the mind, is going to give you the feel for when that cycle is complete.
Exactly.
Now, you know, we're in the middle of this huge global cycle as well. And I just wanted to point out just something real quickly, just kind of tying in what we took a look at last week, tying it into what we're looking at this week. When we take a look at the big global cycles, it works clockwise. When we take a look at, in a sense, the yearly cycles, it goes the opposite. It goes counterclockwise. So we're currently in the global cycle of the era of planning, which we're in the 42. And so the plan, and this started in 1961, and we've been actually in the 42 for about 400 some odd years. But starting in 1961, we moved to 42-1, right? So this is growth. This is the current plan. Growth through expansion. The ability when surplus resources are available to extend one's activities beyond their normal scope. Too much expansion can lead to decadence, right? So that's kind of where we're at right now. And I think it's part of what we're having to face is if we take a look at, we're used to having things, we can go to the store and we get things off the shelf, and, now we're going to the store and there's no toilet paper, right? So it's kind of realizing, wow, we've kind of been in this sort of era of decadence where everything is at our fingertips. What do we need to pay attention to? And I've mentioned this before. Last week, we took a look at the 51. Where we're moving towards is the separation in the 51-6. This is the power of the ego to meet challenges alone. And in times of crisis, when all those around are confused and in disorder, the ability not to succumb to panic, but have the will and vitality to survive it alone. And this is the plan in the era of the individual. So again, you can see during the era of planning, there's been huge amounts of growth. I mean, taking a look at, the founding of the United States was in the era of planning, right? This expansion across the world, across the globe, and now the expansion of everything at our fingertips. So now it's really about, we have all of this stuff, but do we trust ourselves? Again, we've turned our authority over to others, and it's really time. This is really speaking to, what we talked about, with this separation, but in a sense, being able to make decisions properly for you, not trusting on outer authorities, but trusting yourself, so you don't succumb to the confusion and the disorder. Because I think, again, we're at just the start. We're setting the foundation of the 7-year cycle moving towards 2027. So I just wanted to kind of give you that heads up, and then we'll go back and focus on the 42, but just kind of realizing that the 42 has been in our background frequency for, the last 400 some odd years. And that is part of what's going away. So let's now focus in on the 42 of growths, this quality 5, this self-actualization. So I kind of mapped it onto Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We have the physiological needs such as air, water, food, shelter, sleep, clothing, reproduction, right? It's really, in a sense, our grounding, it's our energy, so this is kind of, if you will, sort of tied to the root, the pressure, right? Where we are, with the drive and stamina, and the energy resource. Then we have our safety needs, right? That is connected to the survival instinct, personal security, employment, resources, health, property, etc. Then we have love and belonging. This is connected to our emotional intelligence, friendship, intimacy, family, a sense of being connected. What we took a look at last week, right? We took a look at willpower with the 51, which is about esteem, respect, self-esteem, status, recognition, strength, freedom. And in a sense, we're completing the cycle and really moving towards this self-actualization. Interesting enough, on the other side, we talked about this last week, of the 51, is the 25, which really leads us into this universal love, this self-actualization, the desire to become the most that one can be. And I think we're in a sense, an evolutionary cycle where, in a sense, this, especially in this next 7 years, kind of taking a look at what is really self-actualization. How do we, become more than we can be? And so if we take a look at the elevation, when we're taking a look at quality 5, growth that is self-fulfilling and naturally leads to influence. The fulfillment and actualization of purpose as a natural path whose reward is a healthy sense of self rather than power and influence naturally follows. We also have the challenge, also the inner growth that empowers reclusiveness, the self-actualizing as strictly an inner experience that may demand or result in a reclusive nature. So it's, whether you express it outwards or whether it's really, inner growth that empowers yourself individually, by yourself. So this also is a quality that Chris has as well. So I'm really interested to hear what you have to say, about, in a sense, this process of self-actualization. And again, we talked about this shock, and it's interesting that right after shock, it leads to, in a sense, a completion of a cycle that really is about, this awakening and really ultimately awakening to this self-actualization. Yes, Chris.
So one of the things to think about, again, when we're talking about trait 42, it's the end, it's like getting the lesson, it's the experience, but it's also death. So trait 42 is the trait in our body that says, that knows, that is programmed to die, right? It's inherently in the design, it's built into the design, and it has an anxiety of death that's already in it. And what we're looking at right now, and this kind of goes back to what Connor was saying, is like all of this has been happening for a long, long time, right? The patterns and the cycles have been happening for a long, long time. What's shocking is that the veils are being lifted and we're being able to see that. And as we're looking at this self-actualization, what we're really doing, and what BG5 Business Institute and human design is really all about, is liberating people to self-actualize, to trust themselves as themselves, to operate correctly that way. That is the evolution. That's actually what's happening. Whether you like it or not, that's what's happening. And for some people, that's going to be a real shock, because we have, coming out of the era of planning, we're looking at the outer authority. It's the outer authority that has been telling us what's important, what to learn, what a work day looks like, how much money we can earn, what we're supposed to learn in our schools, psychology, medicine, religion, everything that we are taught is controlled that way. And and the way that it can be controlled is by manipulating that anxiety that's inherent in each and every one of us. So we're naturally going to have a little bit of anxiety. If you look at cultures where they understand death and they are okay with it and they have a sense of peace about it, they can't be manipulated as quickly as the rest of us, the majority of us. So what happens is that little niggling that we know that time is short, that that we gotta move you gotta hurry up and finish your test. Like it's ingrained from the very earliest age. Hurry up, we got to get going. Learn how to go to the bathroom. We got to move. Any of us who's a parent knows exactly. We've all been there. Hurry up and learn how to tie your shoes so I don't have to keep doing it. You know what I mean? Like there's so much of that. It's always there. But then when we look at like the larger era of planning, it has manipulated this fear of death and created an entire world where it expands anxiety and then says, oh, you're feeling anxious? Here's some medicine for that. Here's a video for that. Here's a book for that. Here's something else for that. Like, here's some drugs, here's some alcohol, here's some shopping. Here's like, it creates anxiety. This is what you should want. This is what is important for you. We are literally living in this anxiety soup. This is what I talk about in my podcast today. This is what I went off on my podcast, is like the amount of control that can happen in this trait based on, and that's how it's been able to operate for the last 400 years. When we start to wake up and we look and we go, whoa, wait, who am I really? Whoa, wait a minute. There's more than enough time to live my purpose. Because when you get that just being you is living your purpose, you recognize that time is irrelevant. Whether you live for a day or 100 years or 100 days, it doesn't matter. Just you being here is enough. What's so cool, here's the last piece I'm going to say about this, is that anxiety that most people are feeling right now, you could look at it as a manipulation, but you could also look at it as a wake-up call. Our body it's feeling anxiety because it knows it's being manipulated. It knows that there's another truth. And so we're experiencing this anxiety and we don't know what to do with it. And that's what we're being called into right now. That's the shocking piece that's happening, is that we're like, I feel anxious. I don't understand why. And everything that we've been told, we're like, it looks good on paper. It sounds good. But you've said this before, Karen, you're like, you could put whipped cream on shit. It's still shit. You know what I mean? And I think the anxiety that most people are feeling right now is a really good thing. It means that your body intelligence is working. It means that you're like, something isn't right. And no amount of medication, no amount of Netflix, no amount of drugs or alcohol or shopping or anything, a lot of that stuff we can't do. Or some people stocked up and they're doing it a lot. But, you know what I mean? But anyway, that's what I think is going on here in this self-actualization, and what's really supporting us in that right now.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point, Chris. You know, and if we take a look at what's happening, it's a pandemic, right?
Yeah.
So it's getting everyone to face, in a sense, their own mortality, right? And the mortality of those around us as well, right? We don't want to pass it on. We don't, you know, we don't want to catch it ourselves, whatever that is. And so it's really putting us, you know, face to face with, you know, what if I catch it? What if, you know, these are my last days on earth. So I think it's a really important point. And what you just said is, you know, again, sort of that facing of death, and where we're really, you know, we're here to self-actualize. And as Chris so beautifully and eloquently said, you know, we really are here, you know, whether it be, you know, a few days or whether it be hundreds of years, you know, to hundreds of years. But
those really old timers.
Right, exactly. But regardless, right, when you are living correctly, you get exactly what you need. And you provide and you give to this planet exactly what is needed.
Yeah.
And there's a beautiful synergy there. And we don't have to be dependent anymore in the ways that we have in the past, right? That's starting to go away. And so again, you see a lot of this, as we're moving into this new cycle, you see a lot of this individuality, this self-actualization, this really moving towards living true to who you are and trusting yourself versus what Chris was talking about, all of those outer authorities. Yeah.
Yeah, and what I actually like about this period, it's like it's orchestrated, right? Like the universe is helping us to get to ourselves. We are in self-quarantine. You are outside of the conditioning force of the world, right? You're in your own aura and your own frequency, getting to yourself. First of all, and the period is long enough as well, right? So if you go on holiday, probably all of you have this, like the first week you're like, and then you settle down, right? It's so the period is long enough to first get like blah, 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 you know, and then now we're getting into, okay, you know, relaxing into this and looking to ourselves or feeling ourselves or becoming aware of that there's something else than me going to work, doing my work, make dinner, do the kids, go to bed, and all over again, right? So yeah, it's fascinating. It's fascinating.
Yeah, exactly. And I wanted to, you know, talking about this self-actualization and what Chris had mentioned before, you know, this need to complete the cycle. I just have this this quote from Ra that I wanted to share. He says, all is well that ends. He said, you don't have to add, you know, that ends well. All is well that ends. Everything is designed to come to a natural close, to a natural end. He said, think about the torture in human lives that do not complete things, and you carry them unfinished within you, and how much pain that brings. how it distorts your use of time and energy in your life, and how it takes you away from your nature and your purpose. Self-actualization is very, very important. The message, and if we take a look at self-actualization, this is the message, if you will, of the 42. The message is that the experience of being human, the experience is that in the experience of being human, to complete the experience is the most important thing to get it over with. When you can figure out what it was worth, what it was about, and whether or not you want to do it again. So again, it's sticking with it through the process so it comes to its natural completion, so that you can evaluate it, so that you can learn the lessons, so that you can grow from it. And then instead of holding on to it, just like Chris was saying, boom, you can just let it all go.
Yeah, and go through the process without expectation, because then you're kind of expecting what you are going to learn, or whether or not it was worthwhile going through, whether or not it's worthwhile going through this period we're in right now, all of us. Doesn't matter right now, right? Just live it. You know, the end will come. All is well that ends. It will end, and then we'll learn our lessons. Then we'll get to, you know, we'll move forward with the lesson learned. We'll move forward in the next cycle. So it's
And the mind wants to get in there, and it does this kind of thing. Well, if this happens, then I'll be done, or then I'm out. Like it creates little mathematical computations based on expectations. So it's not being in the experience fully and completely when the mind is trying to do a cycle. It's about, well, okay, if I go and I think about a relationship, or think about a situation, a business, think about you're going to launch a product or a service or something like that. And you go, okay, well, if 5 people want it, then I'll go ahead and do it. That's like a total mind thing that decides whether or not it's going to happen, versus what does it feel like to offer it? What does it feel like to create from that? Think about a relationship. Well, I'm going to tell them this, and if they say this, okay, we'll stay together. And if they say this, we won't. That's not present. That's not actually, that's
expectation.
Like expectation, right? There's nothing in the experience there. It's all about the mind. And that's why it gets so hard for us to complete something, or to really be done with it, because our mind is like, oh my God, what if I let go? What if I fear of missing out? What if I never find someone, you know, all this stuff that doesn't allow us to be in our body having the experience. And believe me, I totally understand what that is, because I'm way too stinking smart for my own good. Like I'm way
as most of us
intellectual. Yeah, exactly. Most of us
what I hear all around. I wish I was, you know, just a postman or whatever, you know. That's what a lot of
like
or
Forrest
whatever.
Gump. I want to be Forrest Gump.
Yeah, exactly. But and also being in the experience is just being in the now, not thinking about the future, not thinking about the past, which is difficult for us, but it's what it is. Just be in the now. Observe what's happening, observe what you feel.
And then responding, right? If you're a builder, or waiting for the recognition and invitation if you're an advisor, you know, or you know, waiting for that initiation as an evaluator, or being moved into action if you're an innovator, right? So the magic comes from, in a sense, letting go of trying to control the outcome. Because again, you know, if we take a look at what this is connected to, it is connected to emotional intelligence. If we take a look at the entire circuitry, you know, and that desire, you can, you know, it builds and it builds and it builds and it builds with expectation, and it can crash with disappointment. And that crash can be not only disappointing, it can also be very painful as well. And sometimes we do need to experience the pain so that we have the lesson on the other side, right? Life isn't always, roses and unicorns and, everything
Except for my
happy.
daughter, she thinks it is.
Life, has its waves. It has its ups and downs. And sometimes, the places that we learn the most is, when we've crashed, when it's, and when we can be with, that pain, when we can be with that shock, when we can be with, that, in a sense, the negative side of things, that's often where the biggest lessons are also learned as well. So it's really, in a sense, surrendering to everything that's happening, both good and bad.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I was actually thinking about BG5 Live yesterday when I, at the end of the day, when I went to bed, I was like, going over, the times we're in, etc. And it's kind of a dark time, right? Where we live as a global community go through, and some people are losing their jobs, and some people are getting sick, people die, people lose people, but there's also light at the end of the tunnel. And I don't know if that's an English expression, but it's or the sun behind the clouds, right? It's and the growth, and that's why I was thinking about it yesterday, the growth coming from it. So I really, and we've talked about this before in BG5 Live as well, I really think, a year from now or half a year from now even, the world is different. And we are in a massive learning here, like global learning, transitioning, whatever, in a tough time right now. But there's really light at the other side, and so all of you hang in there. We'll get there. But yeah.
Yep, exactly. All right. Well, I'm just going to show this really fast because we don't have a lot of time, but I do want to always tie in, someone who was born on this date. So Emma Watson, who is an actress, she played Hermione. I think it's Hermione. Is that how you say it? Yeah, Hermione. Yeah, in Harry Potter. And so the life work theme is limitation. So what you can and cannot, and know what can and cannot be completed, and understand the need to accept limitation in order to ensure material success and to master resources. Limitation creates the boundaries that hold our universe together. And so this goes right along with what we were talking about. It's almost like within limitation, when you know what the guidelines are, what the boundaries are, when you can just surrender to it, right? Right now, we are all limited in one way or another, right? Because businesses are closed down, shops are closed down, we're at home. So there is this limitation. But yet within this limitation, if we can surrender to it, there is, there's magic behind it, and the limitation creates the boundaries that hold our universe together. So we can, again, sort of accepting those limitations, accepting the ride that we're on, the good, the bad, the ugly, all and everything in between. Again, as Natalie said, we'll get to that light at the end of the tunnel, and things will change. Things will be very, very different. So, so here's Chris's design. So you can see very clearly she has the strength. Lavina also has the 42 as well. I don't have the 42, but I have the 53 on the other side.
And in your life work, so
yes,
it's quite strong.
So with the 53 exactly. So so just to wrap up everything, first of all, if you are new to BG5 and human design, I do invite you to get a free report on our website. Also, you can find the past episodes of the BG5 Live in our free resources, and you can track along with what the energy is, what the feel is, what the trait is for the day by taking a look at BG5 Live on the website. Also, we do have our new courses that are coming up in May, so I invite you to check out those courses as well. So to wrap everything up, first of all, I would love to hear if there's anything in our BG5 live room or if there's anything in the Facebook Live. Would love to hear from anyone who has any comments first. And then Natalie and Chris, just taking a look at what to look at, what to be prepared for, what to take in, you know, to remove those expectations as we go through the next couple of days. And then again, we're then moving into the trouble at the beginning. So remember, whenever you end a cycle, when something is then complete, then we also start something new. So at the other side of ending is also a new beginning. And so that's where we're in that process right now of ending and then beginning something new. So anything from our Facebook Live or in our Zoom room?
I don't see anything that we have time to answer.
Okay.
Like 1 or 2 questions, but they're more like
They're like
beyond
yeah.
this. Yeah.
Got it. So anything or any recommendations for everyone who's watching to just pay attention to and be aware of in the next week until we meet again next Tuesday?
Yeah, well, for me, it's really, don't worry. You know, it's all in the universe. Trust the universe and just observe. Try not to get anxious, you know, but yeah, just observe what's happening to take your lesson and your personal growth.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you, Natalie. How about for you, Chris?
Yeah, I think what is ready to be let go of or complete that you may be hanging on to, and it's causing that sense of, you know, pain internally or externally in your world. So what is that? It might be a way of doing things. It might be an old pattern, and you're really ready to step into being in a different way in life or work or relationships or something like that. Or it might be the physical ending of something that it just needs to. So where are you, you know, trying to force an ending before it's time, or avoiding an ending? That would be something that I would encourage you to tap into. And then also, if you have the 53, like Karen's like, what can you get done? How can you borrow some of that energy and get some shit done right now, and clean out your closets and whatever, and really just keep watching the movie, and it's all good. We're all being very, very held right now. We're safe. It's going to be okay.
Yep. Yeah. Beautiful. Thank you, Chris. And just tying back to what Natalie said, there is a light at the end of this tunnel. And, you know, as uncomfortable as it's been, you know, for some of us, you know, it's normally how we work. For others, it has been, you know, really challenging. And so wherever you're at, take a look at where you have expectations, right? And just watch them, you know, watch your expectations. As Chris said, you know, it really is a time for wrapping things up, for completing things. Where are you in a cycle? And again, not trying to force the end of the cycle, but just taking a look at, can I let go of this? Has the cycle, because oftentimes we can also do the opposite too, right? We can either try to force an end, or we hold on to something so tightly that we don't let it end. And I think in many respects, some of us have held on to stuff so tightly that we haven't allowed it to come to its natural completion. And so this is a time to kind of let go, just relax, allow things to unfold. And those things that need to be complete will naturally be brought to completion. And with that, we will complete our BG5 Live for today. Thank you so much, everyone. It was a pleasure having you all here, and we'll see you next week. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.